Well, good morning, Star Point Church. We are just so grateful that you are here and choosing to spend part of your day right here in our church as we worship our amazing God. And for those online, we're just so grateful as well that you're making this part of your day. You're such an important part of our church. And look, we invite you in Thursday evenings or on a Sunday. We'd love to have you here. I promise you will not regret coming in person. So if it's your first time here, I'm not Pastor Roscoe. If it's not your first time, you already know that. My name is Jamie Pierce. I'm part of the leadership team here at the church. Pastor Roscoe's on a well-deserved little short weekend off. He'll be back next week. So if it is your first time, please come back next week. I think most of you know that my wife, BJ, and I spend a part of our year down in Florida. We snowbird a little bit of it. On Thursday, at the service on Thursday, I took credit for bringing the Florida weather back up here, right? Yes. Thank you. I will now take the blame for the mini hurricane that we also apparently brought because it just rained and rained and rained on Friday and Saturday. So my apologies for that. However, I want to tell you this. While we're gone, while we're in Florida, we really miss this church. This is an incredibly special place. And God is doing amazing things in this church right now, in this place, in the Capital District, that I think kind of spreads well beyond the Capital District and around the world. So just know that we think of you and we pray for this church all the time. Paul says to pray constantly, and we do. We do pray constantly for the church. Today, we're going to play a little word association game. It's pretty easy. We're going to show a picture up on the screen, and you just think of the single word. It's just a single word. Don't need a sentence that comes to mind when you see this picture. Everybody got it? Pretty simple. I think we can all do it. Okay, here we go. Peace. Yes, it is not a Mercedes symbol. Thank you, somebody who told me that before. Yes, it is peace. So keep that theme in mind. How about this one? Peace, yes, sharp. Now, this next one's a little trickier. You're gonna have to make a little leap of faith here. This next one is peace. There we go. It is a dove. Yes, it's a dove, but a dove is a symbol of peace. The last one's probably our most challenging one. Peace, yes. I couldn't resist. My apologies. Peace, yes, peace. Did you know that the word peace, or the subject of peace, appears 24 different times in the Gospels alone? That's how important it is to Jesus. 24 times in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If you take the New Testament from the Gospels all the way to the book of Revelation, it appears over 100 times. And if you take the entire Bible, the Old Testament plus the New Testament, it appears over 400 times. That's how important peace is to God, right? He is a God of unity and peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And it appears in his word so much because it is so important to him. So today, special treat, we're going to unpack all 420 peace verses one by one as we go through the rest. I will not do that, I promise. We're not going to do that. Those in the back, please sit down, don't leave. We will not unpack all 420 verses, but we are going to tie together because peace is so important to Jesus. Now, for the last several weeks, we've been unpacking what Jesus has to say about happiness. Now, Jesus didn't ask me, but when people ask me about happiness, I think I could create a recipe for happiness, maybe a list for happiness. Maybe your list looks something like this, right? To be happy, well, I need a lot of money. If I had a lot of money, I could genuinely be happy. I don't need to be super rich. I'm not greedy. I don't need Elon Musk money. I just want to win the lottery and have a whole lot of money. But then I need a big house. Everybody knows that a big house makes you happy. So I need a lot of money and a big house. You know what else would make me happy? Some kids, right? I think maybe 4 kids would make me happy, right? Most of the time. These are not my kids. These are internet kids. And then, you know what? I'd like to be married, right? Maybe I should have started with that. I should have told BJ that she came up fourth there. I'll be married, and then a lot of money, and then a house, and then kids. You know what else makes me happy? Dogs. I love dogs, especially cute little puppies. How could you not love dogs? And if I have these dogs and these 4 internet kids, I got to get them around someplace. So I need a new truck. A new truck would definitely make me happy. Nothing would make me happier than a new truck. But you know what? 4 kids is a lot. Maybe 3 kids, and it would make me happy if they like the Jaguars. So that's what I need is 3 kids. These are my actual kids in their Jaguars gear. And of course, a jet ski, because everybody knows that jet skis make you happy. All right, so if I had all that stuff, I would be happy. But I think you know that this is just a lot of stuff. And stuff doesn't necessarily make you happy. It may make you smile a little bit, but I think we also know that sometimes stuff causes as much pain or problems as it brings happiness. And not that my relationship with my wife or my kids is stuff, but they're not here to make me happy. And I take incredible joy out of our relationships, but it's not their job to make me happy. So Jesus talks about happiness in his Sermon on the Mount. It appears in Matthew chapter 5. And he talks about happiness, but just like Jesus, there's not a list of happiness things. There's not a bunch of rules to follow. In fact, Jesus says, hey, these things when I talk about happiness, these aren't rules to follow, but these are really just characteristics of truly happy people. In fact, they're called the Beatitudes. Beatitudes means blessings or happiness, right? And it is 8 verses of characteristics of happy people. And Pastor Ross will unpack that, so we won't spend a lot of time talking about that today. But today we're going to talk about the penultimate beatitude. I really just wanted to work the word penultimate in on a slide because I think it's a great word. All penultimate means is second to the last. It is the 7th of 8 beatitudes. And at the face of it, it's a pretty simple beatitude. It's a pretty simple blessing, but it also comes with a lot of complexity. So we're going to spend some time unpacking that today. So here's our beatitude. Number 7, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Or happy, truly happy, satisfied are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. 12 simple words with a whole lot of nuance and understanding behind it. And I think it's ironic. And it's ironic the way that only God could do. But I think it's ironic that out of all the Beatitudes, out of all the times I've spoken, that I was asked to speak about this today. And the irony is that for most of my career, for most of my profession, I was in a job that you wouldn't necessarily call a peacemaker. In fact, I think very few people would call it a peacemaker. I was a helicopter pilot in the Navy, deployed overseas several times. The helicopter was designed to drop weapons that were made to destroy enemy submarines. They would fire missiles that would, destroy enemy ships. I spent a year in Afghanistan walking around in body armor with a rifle and a pistol and a whole lot of ammo. And again, I don't think you would necessarily say that, look at that and say, there goes a peacemaker. And we're going to take a little detour on our highway on the Sermon on the Mount and on the Beatitudes. Just take a little detour, talk about something that I think often we struggle with, we think about, and we may debate it a little bit, and then we just kind of push it off to the side because everyday life is everyday life, and I don't have a whole bunch of time to think about it. But we're going to unpack this for a second. And that's this. There is a powerful difference between God's kingdom and our earthly kingdom. There is a powerful, large difference, a gap, a chasm between God's eternal and holy kingdom and our transient, temporary, earthly kingdoms. In fact, I'm going to take it down near a very bottom level. And that's, there is tension between individual ethics and government ethics. There's tension, there's a gap in what we do as individuals and the ethics we follow and what we ask our governments to do. So what do I mean by that? Individual ethics, they're your personal character. Where does your heart lead you? How do you respond to things that happen? Like, how do you respond to your enemies? How do you treat the poor? How do you uphold righteousness? How do you forgive? Those are individual ethics. And Jesus has a lot to say about that. Government ethics, the government ethics are much more involved in things that we ask them to do. Provide peace, provide security, help us to be prosperous. Government ethics are much more concerned about order and law and order and security than they really are about individual freedoms and ethics. And sometimes what we ask our governments to do in order to maintain this order, this peace, this security, also may involve the use of force. It may be our military, could be our police force, often our courts to help uphold justice. So to make it really clear, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, is for our individual discipleship, right? This is Jesus telling us these are the characteristics of truly happy people. This is how you are to act. This is how you should behave. And if you studied these truly happy people, you would see these behaviors. It's not about government ethics. It's about a revolutionary way to look at how we should behave and react to others. I'll give you an example. Also in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus is talking about how do you react to an enemy or to anger? And he says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. You've heard that before. Turn the other cheek, right? This is a message on forgiveness. This is a revolutionary concept that if somebody, instead of an eye for an eye, it's turn the other cheek and they can hit me again. And that's not what we want our governments to do. If somebody attacked our country, we would not want to turn the other cheek and say, well, you can have the rest. No, we ask our country to respond. We ask our governments to respond, probably in this case with military or police or something. So there's just this big difference between these very revolutionary teachings that Jesus brings and instructs us on and what we ask our governments to do. To kind of boil it down, we ask governments to uphold justice. Jesus calls us to radical forgiveness. So a big difference between there, but one that when you think about what I did as a profession and what Jesus calls me to do, I can try to rationalize, and not even rationalize, but I can put them, they belong in two different camps. I'd also offer that if everyone was a true follower of Jesus, hopefully we'd have no sin in the world, and we wouldn't need these kind of government ethics to uphold us, but we're not all, right? Our challenge is to help bring Jesus to other people. Okay, detour done. We're back on the Beatitude superhighway. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now, I think when Jesus was given this sermon, when he was given this message, I think there were people that nodded their head a lot, right? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the kingdom. Yes, the meek. That's kind of right. Not the rich, it's the meek. Yes, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Yes, this makes a lot of sense. Yes, blessed are the peacemakers. And I think there were people in the audience that said, whoa, what did he say? Did he say peacemakers? And if I look at there, you told me to come hear this guy. You said he was the Messiah. He's the anointed one. He is going to deliver us. And he's talking about peacemakers. We don't need a peacemaker, right? What we need is somebody to deliver us from the Romans, right? We need somebody to set up our kingdom and get the Romans out of here so that we can worship freely and we can run our country by ourselves. If he's the Messiah, if he's the anointed one, why is he talking about peacemaking? In fact, I think they wanted somebody that looked like King David did, right? David, the warrior king who slays Goliath. That's the kind of king that they're looking for. There's this powerful warrior king that can set up a great earthly kingdom. And I think they expect Jesus should show up on a horse with a sword and disperse the Romans and everybody's gone. And instead, they get Jesus, the good shepherd, right? Jesus who will leave the 99 sheep to go find the one lost sheep. And I just think that was really, really confusing for them. Blessed are the peacemakers, but this is the Messiah? What? We were just so confused. So let's unpack this a little bit. What is a peacemaker? So peacemaker comes from a Greek word called irenopios. And it's a Greek word because remember our Bibles were originally written in Greek. Those are kind of the literary language of the time. Even though they were Roman and spoke Latin, they used Greek in that part of the world. So it means one who brings peace through action. So peacemaking is never passive. Can't sit on your porch, drink iced tea, and just make peace. Doesn't happen that way. Peacemaking always takes action. It always takes some sort of initiative. Peace itself. Peace is from a Hebrew word called shalom. You've probably heard that word before. Shalom can be a greeting. It could be kind of a hello and goodbye. Shalom means God's peace. So when you wish somebody shalom, you're wishing them God's peace. But God's peace is so much more than just the absence of conflict. God's peace is so much more than just I want some peace and quiet. God's peace is this peace that just completely fills your soul, that completely overwhelms you with security and peacefulness. So it's not just stop fighting, right? No, it is just this overwhelming shalom, this overwhelming God's peace, which causes serenity and fulfillment and happiness, right? Blessed are the peacemakers. So how do you recognize a peacemaker? So I think one easy way to start is let's talk about what peacemakers are not. Peacemakers are not peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are people who are willing to keep the peace no matter what. They don't like conflict. They just, let's keep the status quo. Can everybody just get along, right? That's a peacekeeper. And Jesus does not say, blessed are the peacekeepers. He says, blessed are the peacemakers. I think we all know people like that I just want to let things mellow out. Just stop the fighting, right? I'll give up anything. I'll do anything you want me to do to have peace. And what does that mean? That often means down the road that issue pops back up again and often causes even more conflict. And I'll tell you, Jesus was not a peacekeeper. I mean, think of what he had to say to the Pharisees. Think of what he had to say about him. He is willing to face into the issues in order to talk about making peace rather than just keeping peace. Notice also he doesn't say, blessed are the peace lovers, blessed are the peace wishers, blessed are the peace hopers, blessed are the peace wanters, right? Because those are all great, right? We love peace, we want peace, we pray for peace, but a peacemaker takes action. It takes courage, it takes initiative. You have to do something to make peace. So what is a peacemaker? So a peacemaker is a reconciler, right? It's kind of a longer word. And I think reconcile, it's kind of a churchy word, right? It's kind of like righteousness, right? I don't use reconcile or righteousness very often when I'm outside of church. So it's kind of this churchy word. And I think it's sometimes just not really truly understood. So what does reconcile mean? Reconcile means to restore a broken relationship. It's pretty simple. God is a relationship, it's broken. If I can restore that relationship, it is reconciled. Now, the Apostle Paul, he wrote a lot of letters, right? He makes up most of the New Testament. Well, in these letters, he helps explain Jesus's teachings and how they apply to the church and how they apply to you and how they apply to me. And he talks about reconciliation. So check out what he says in Corinthians. He says, all this, everything, is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ. All this is from God, who restored the relationship with God and us through the sacrifice of Jesus, right? It's pretty simple. Here's God, there's a bunch of sin, and here's us, right? We are separated from God by sin. And for thousands of years, we try to be good enough. We try to follow the law. We try to follow all these rules. And that, hopefully, if we do them all right, it'll get us closer and closer and closer to God. And then we'll pay a sacrifice in order to cleanse ourselves. And then we can be reconciled with God. But guess what happens the very next day? Well, sin again. And we can't get the rules right. We can't get the laws right. And so it's sacrifice after sacrifice. And God says, look, we're separated. And I know we're separated. I'm going to solve this once and for all. I'm going to reconcile this. I'm going to restore the relationship. I'm going to send my son down. He's going to walk with you, talk with you. He's going to teach you. He's going to model things for you. And he's going to offer himself up as the ultimate, the final sacrifice so that you can be restored to me. So that's what Paul is talking about. All this comes from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ. But check out the second part of this verse because it's very important to us. Because it says all this from God who reconciled himself through Christ. And it says, and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So not only did he restore our relationship, but he also said, now here's what you have to go do. You have to reconcile yourselves with each other. You need to take all those broken relationships that you have and you need to repair them. You need to take those broken relationships and you need to restore them. That is my charge to you. That is my task for you. I give you this ministry and I ask you, I demand of you that if you want to be at peace, then you need to reconcile those broken relationships. I'll give you an example, a personal example. I have an older brother. His name's John. Wonderful guy. I love my older brother. He's a police officer in Detroit for years. He has the courage of a lion. He has the gentleness of a lamb at times. Just an amazing guy. What I really love about him, he is always in my corner. Always. He's my biggest supporter. And I just take so much comfort. I don't talk to him every day. I mean, we don't talk that often, but I always know that he is there. He's got my back. He's just an amazing guy. And then one time something happened and he stopped talking to me. Stopped talking to my whole family. He was really, really hurt. And I'll tell you, it was a fairly innocuous thing. BJ and I flew to Atlanta to see my parents. They were in some community theater thing. So we just, on a whim, went down there. My sister also lives nearby. She showed up. She lives nearby in Atlanta. And then my aunt and uncle drove a couple hours to come. And so next thing you know, there's like this little mini reunion, except for my brother wasn't invited. I mean, nobody was really invited. It just kind of happened. But his feelings were really, really hurt. And I had heard that, so I tried calling him and went right into voicemail. So I did what I would do. I blamed him. I mean, quit being a baby. This is silly. This is nobody's fault. Then I blamed me. I blamed the circumstances, but it really didn't matter because at the end of the day, I just really missed knowing he was in my corner. Like I said, we don't talk that often, but just knowing that he's always there. And I really, really hated it. It really bugged me. So I kept calling. I called, and I won't say that. I called, and he kept just pushing me into voicemail. So I started texting him and writing to him. And I would just leave him very simple messages. I miss you. Next day, I can't wait to talk to you. Next day, I love you. Next day, hey, I'm sorry for whatever happened. But not whatever, I'm sorry for leaving you out. And I just constantly just tried to get his attention to let him know I was thinking about him. So I will tell you, that fast forward, the good news is I'm very happy to say our relationship is reconciled. It's reconciled with the whole family. Everything is great. In fact, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. Unfortunately, it took a horrible family tragedy just to really kind of get us in the same room and be able to reconcile. But we're just so grateful to have that relationship restored. And I tell you that to tell you this. It takes effort to be a peacemaker. It takes initiative, it takes courage, it takes effort to be a peacemaker. It's not gonna happen on its own. Okay, blessed are the peacemakers. But what about the second half of that verse? For they will be called children of God. Wait, I thought I already was a child of God. We sing songs about I am a child of God. So does this mean I have to be a peacemaker to be called a child of God? What if I'm a bad peacemaker? Apparently I am. I'm not really good at this. So am I not a child of God? Is this an if-then thing? And so the good news is it's not an if-then. In fact, John, brother of James, right, one of Jesus' disciples, John the beloved, the disciple that's with Jesus when he's crucified, I think the only disciple that's with Jesus when he's crucified, I think he understands Jesus pretty well, right? I think if anybody could tell us what Jesus is thinking, I think it would be John. And John tells us this right in the very beginning of his gospel. He says, to all who believed in him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. So that's the good news, right? If you believe in Jesus, if you believe he is who he says he was, you are a child of God. So what then is Jesus talking about here when he said they will be called children of God? And here's what I think he's saying. I think Jesus is not teaching us how to become children of God, be a peacemaker and you become a child of God, but rather he's teaching us how to behave as children of God. You ever run into somebody like at a school or a party or some event and you think, this has got to be so-and-so's child. This has got to be Jamie's kid. I can tell by the way he walks, by the way he talks, by the way he acts. That's got to be it's got to be their child. Sometimes it reflects very proudly on the parent. Sometimes it may be not so proud of him. My poor parents probably like, what? Do you know Jamie? Are you Jamie Pierce's mom? Why? What did he do? So I think that's what Jesus is talking about here is how do you reflect, how do people know that you are a child of God? And it's by being a peacemaker. Check out what Paul says in Ephesians. Paul says, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children and walk in the way of love just as Christ loved us. Follow God's example as dearly loved children. And what is that example? He tells us very clearly in Colossians. And through him, through Jesus, God reconciled everything to himself. Follow that example. Be a reconciler. Be a peacemaker, and people will recognize you as a Christian and as a child of God. So some of you may say, I try to be a peacemaker. I run into people. I have a person I go to work with that, no matter how much I try to be a peacemaker, they don't want to be a peacemaker. In fact, they're always fanning the flames. They're pouring a little bit of gas on the fire all the time. They post these outrageous things on Facebook that, there's no peacemaking about it. In fact, they're a troublemaker. I am a peacemaker. They're a troublemaker. How do I deal with that? So the good news is Paul gives us some very clear instruction on how to deal with that. In his letter to the Romans, Paul says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So live at peace with everyone, but as far as it depends on you. So if you're running up against a troublemaker, you can only control what you control. In fact, I think what Paul's saying, it's not how do you find peace or create peace with others, it's how do you bring peace to others, right? You only control that part. God owns the rest. So how do you bring peace to others? How do you be a peacemaker and let God do everything else? So I'll ask you this. How are you doing in peacemaking? I think we probably all have one or more relationships that we would like to restore or repair. We would reconcile. We'd like to be the peacemaker. Some of us would say, look, Jamie, there's a relationship out there that I am not going to reconcile. I do not want anything to do with this person. This person is toxic. They hurt me. They left me. They cheated on me. They abused me. There is no reason to restore that relationship. You know what? I hear you. I really, really do. And I have felt that pain before, and I have some of those scars. And here's what I offer. If the scars are so deep, then I would pray about that with God. I would turn that over to God. There are people up here after church that would love to get you started on that healing, because that's healing that we need to do inside. I need to heal those scars before we ever even try to reconcile. And I'll offer you kind of these three last things. One, to be a peacemaker, you need to be at peace with God. You need to be at peace with where you are. You need to talk to God. You need to be at peace in your relationship with God and your relationship with yourself. The second thing is you need to practice shalom. Right? You need to practice asking for and feeling, encountering God's peace, this wholeness, this peace that only comes in a relationship with God, and then extending that peace, that shalom, that total God's peace to others as you try to make peace. And then the third thing, probably one of the hardest, is don't wait. Go first. If you're a peacemaker and you're waiting, you're not a peacemaker. So what does that mean? That means, like, if there's somebody that you're thinking of today as we had this conversation, send them a text. Send them something that says, I was thinking about you today. Not a lie. You're not even having to acknowledge anything, but just, you have to go first. Jesus says, if you want to be a peacemaker, if you want to be happy, right, you have to take action, because peacemaking always requires action. So let me leave you with this. Peacemaking is costly. There is always a cost. It cost Jesus his life to reconcile us to God. So it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you some time. It's going to cost you some effort. For some of us, it may cost you always having to be right. It could cost you some pride. It could cost you some status. Peacemaking always comes at a price. But Jesus tells you, if you really want to be happy, if you truly want to be fulfilled. Happy people build bridges, not walls. Happy people reconcile. Happy people are peacemakers. With heads bowed and eyes closed, just imagine with me what your life would be like if it was free of anxiety, that you just felt this overwhelming satisfaction, this fullness that you didn't want for anything, but instead you were at calm with both our external surroundings and with your own soul. And Jesus says that's possible, but it takes peace. Jesus says, I leave you peace. I give you peace. But he also calls us to be peacemakers and take the action to reconcile ourselves with those where we have a broken relationship. Some of you may say, I've never experienced that peace. I don't know what God's peace is. For those people, if you've not entered into a relationship with Jesus, I'm going to invite you right now to pray this prayer with me. And that's, Jesus, I believe you are who you say you are, the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to the Father. I ask you to come into my life, come into my heart, forgive me all my sins, give me peace, and make all things new. If you prayed that prayer for the first time, we would love, come up afterwards. We have people want to pray over you, and also help you on your journey on the next steps. Father, we thank you so much for the gift of your Son. We thank you so much that you sent him to bring us back to you, to reconcile us to you, to restore that broken relationship. Lord, we're just so grateful for that without that we would be so distant from you, but with you, we can experience your peace and we can experience true happiness by being a peacemaker. We ask you this week, give us the courage to go out and make peace, to take the action that we need to take to restore those broken relationships and to reconcile ourselves to others. We ask all this in the powerful name of Jesus.